Good evening and welcome to the March 28th Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. We start off with a roll call, please.
Chair Greenfield,
Here.
Vice Chair Lemaire,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Cripps,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yeah.
Commissioner Oche,
Yeah, please.
and Vice Mayor Stone.
Here.
Chair, that's 8 present.
Thank you. If any members of the public would care to comment on an item that's not on our agenda this evening, now's the appropriate time. Please raise your hand if you're online via Zoom. I don't see any hands raised in chambers or on Zoom.
That is correct. I'm seeing no hands raised and no in-person speakers.
Great, thank you. Then we'll move along to agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Do any commissioners have any recommendations of something like to change? Then we'll move forward with the approval of minutes.
Chair Greenfield,
Actually, we'll wait to get a motion to approve it before we go with the vote. Thanks. Thanks for being on it. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes? Any clarifications?
I do
Commissioner Cripps?
have two. On page 13, line 12 and 13, we talk about the desired skating rink, and it might be appropriate to change it to skateboard bowl. Because when I read it, I felt like we were having an ice skating rink. So there. And then on page 15, Vice Mayor Stone talked about the PRC for recommendations. I think he was talking about the e-bikes rather than the swimming meet. So that's on page 15, the last line, 35. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments from other commissioners? Then assuming that we will incorporate those changes, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Freeman. Now can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Cripps,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche.
Yes, please.
Chair, that's a 7-0 vote.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now we'll move on to the department report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Commissioners, Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. I'll start with the recruitment update. We're still recruiting for a vacant park maintenance position. It's proved challenging to fill. We're recruiting for 2 assistant rangers and 1 open space technician position. Those are hourly positions for open space. And the good news is we filled our budget analyst position. So looking forward to getting that new person on any day now. Update on the storm impacts. The strong winds caused challenges through the city, lots of downed trees everywhere, but also in our preserves and parks. Open space staff and the urban forest team from Public Works have been working hard to address them. Open space preserves were closed today due to the high winds. Some of these trees came down in the middle of roads, and even in flatlands in the Baylands where there aren't that many, we had large eucalyptus directly across the roads that were a concern, and out of abundance of caution, wanted to make sure our visitors are safe. We closed them. They will be open tomorrow, and I'll send out an advisory just confirming that once we've made sure that's the case. The Cubberley tennis courts, you might remember they were damaged in the last storm. They were damaged again. Luckily, not to the point they had to be closed, but we will have to do some additional repair work there. The Pierce tennis courts were also damaged, unfortunately, to the extent that they had to be closed, and we're working with a contractor to get some price quotes to get that fixed. Just a reminder, the Rinconada Pool closure is still in effect. They're replastering that pool. That'll be in effect until April 20th. The Measure E recommendation from this commission to council is scheduled for council review on April 3rd. It's coming up very soon. Some good news, the Mayfet Parade and Fair is back this year for its 99th year. It'll take place on Saturday, May 6th, starting at 10 a.m. And this year's theme is empowering wellness through community. Gather your family and friends and show off your float making skills, or just show up with your group and enjoy. For more information, please visit cityofpaloalto.org/Mayfet. And Chair, that concludes the department report.
Thank you, Darren. Do any commissioners have any follow-up questions or related questions or?
I
questions of
do.
staff?
Darren, what does it mean when you say the tennis courts are damaged? What kind of damage?
The fencing.
The fencing
and they were
all came-
blown over. Yeah, it was the wind. That was the problem for both courts.
Thank you.
Just one bit of follow-up. After the first damage to Coverly, we went through and had vents cut in to the windscreens that contribute to the wind. Unfortunately, it did not completely resolve the problem. So there were just such strong winds that even with those vents cut in there, it wasn't enough to stop that.
Other questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask, does that mean that those courts are not available?
The Pierce courts are not available.
Okay. And
Coverly
you have
is,
sort of well, it's kind of hard to come up with a ETA when it's still raining, right? So,
yeah.
okay.
But the step we're at right now is just getting price quotes from, we need 3 vendors to give us price quotes.
Okay. And that's two courts, you said, right?
At Pierce Courts,
Okay.
yes. The Coverly ones are still open.
Okay.
It's just unfortunate, right after we repaired them, they were impacted. So we'll have to do improvements there, but it won't require closure.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. Budget wise, I know you said this might be premature, but in terms of our rainy day fund for court repairs or windy day fund, are we expected to go over that this year just because there have been so many unforeseen circumstances, or do we not know yet?
I think we're going to be okay for all of those. For the 2 repairs at Coverly and Pierce, we have enough sufficient funding between park emergency funds. That's an ongoing CIP for this exact kind of thing, and our court resurfacing funds, which is a separate one. Between the 2, we're covered.
Yes, we have had a lot of rainy days tapping into the rainy day fund. I have a question for you. So this next year, this will be the 99th Mayfet Parade. Do you know how many years since the parade started we have not held the parade, or when the first parade was?
Let's see. I did get a couple notes from one of my colleagues, Adam, and he had said, there are years where it didn't happen. So I'll have to ask for more details on that. I'll get it for the next meeting for sure.
Sure.
Just incidentally, he also said some of the our commissioners were judges last year. If you're interested, you can email Adam Howard and we welcome your participation again.
Yes, I think Commissioner Brown and I were judges last year, and encourage other commissioners to participate. It's a fun event.
What does it entail?
Watching the floats go by and judges and judging them on some set criteria, and sitting around enjoying yourself a bit, and not so bad. Any other questions about judging?
Not about that, though.
Something else, Shawnee?
Something else, not about the parade. Is that now a good time to ask? Did you hear back there from the water board about the golf course?
No, we reached out to Brian Wines, the supervisor, again. He said he's dealing with emergencies and he'll get to us as soon as he can.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
One more thing, Darren. I heard a report that there's some trees impacting on the edge of the Coverly track. I don't know that this is necessarily related to storm damage. It could be root damage. Something I wasn't aware of. I haven't seen this myself, but wanted to alert staff to that.
Yes, we're aware. There's a downed redwood that's sort of hanging in a precarious area. It's off the edge. When it falls, it will not fall onto the track itself. That may be the one that's being referenced. The tree department's aware of it, and it's on their schedule to get to after the higher priority
Sure.
trees.
Great, thank you.
I do have a- So I noticed, I think in Mitchell Park, I was there this weekend, and there's a area on the, I can't remember the street. There's about 4 or 5 eucalyptus trees that seem to be leaning. Are you guys, what's your plan for those? I guess? That area is blocked off, so I don't know if you're cutting them down or they
I'm
seem to
not-
be pretty unstable.
I'm not positive about those. I can tell you throughout the city, we've got watch trees that have been leaned for many years, and some of them do fine. Partially depends on what is underneath them, where they're leaning, and partially depends on a deeper analysis by the tree team. Is there disease, is there rot or compromised root system, that kind of thing. I can look into it and see if they know, but I'm not familiar with those particular ones.
Do you know how many count of how many trees the city has lost during the storms that we?
I was asking my team if they had a better understanding of how many just in open space and parks. And even then we didn't have really good numbers. I have some for specific parks like Greer, we lost 6 in the last 2 storms. Pardee lost 6. Baylands lost 6. And I think Foothills is far more significant, but not just in the preserve. That includes Page Mill Road and along that area.
Thank you.
If there are trees that are sort of at risk but not immediate danger, can you wait until after the nesting season is over?
I think the tree department's really good about not removing a tree unless it absolutely has to be. And right now they're so full with other projects. I think they're in no rush to address anything unless it's critical and dangerous. It's my
Thank you.
impression. But yes, for the open space trees, we're particularly mindful of that being a nature preserve.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Darren. Appreciate it. Let's move on to our first business item. This is the PIO or Park Improvement Ordinance for the horizontal levee project. Darren, would you like to introduce?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce Samantha Englage, Senior Engineer with Public Works Department. Thank you, Sam, for being here.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Darren?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, commissioners. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. I'm here to present on the Palo Alto Horizontal Levee Pilot Project and ultimately to request the Commission's recommendation for a park improvement ordinance to build the Horizontal Levee Pilot Project. Next slide. So the Horizontal Levee Pilot Project has 6 main goals. The first being to improve the habitat at the project location. We also want to enable adaptation to sea level rise by integrating a horizontal levee on the bayfront of a flood control levee. We also want to ensure that we are maintaining and providing compatible low impact recreation and social infrastructure at the site. The 5th goal is to provide polishing treatment to treated wastewater that will be used as irrigation at the site to create a diverse subset of habitats that rely upon freshwater sources. And then we also want to be on the leading edge of integrating habitat enhancement with sea level rise adaptation and novel wastewater treatment. So because this is a novel technology and still an emerging technology, we are seeking to install a permanent pilot project where it's not going to go away. It eventually will be integrated into the larger flood control levee improvement projects. But we want to install this smaller system now so that we can gain important information on design parameters, permitting requirements, as well as cost estimates, so that when we do go to do the larger levee improvement projects within the Palo Alto Baylands, we have this information ready to then incorporate into that larger project. Also, it's a project that has regional importance. Not only can these design parameters and information that we're collecting on permitting and costing be applied to Palo Alto, but it can also be applied throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. And because of that, we've been able to strategically partner with the San Francisco Estuary Partnership and contract, excuse me, with Environmental Science Associates to conduct the engineering and design of the project. And we've been fortunate enough to get significant grant funding to support the project from the Coastal Conservancy and the Environmental Protection Agency. Next slide, please. So what is a horizontal levee? A horizontal levee, at its basic definition, is a gently sloping vegetated berm or ecotone slope that is on the water side of a flood control levee. In this picture here, it's the area that's circled in red. And as you can see, if you start from the right side of the figure, you'll see a flood control levee, shortly followed by an underground irrigation network of treated wastewater that is then feeding and supporting a diverse habitat and vegetated slope that is then providing transition habitat between upland and the tidal marsh that's to the left of the graphic. Next slide, please. Another way to describe horizontal levees is as a green infrastructure alternative to a traditional grayscape solution for wave attenuation, also known as riprap. The photo on the left is a photo of the San Mateo levees near my house. It's made up of large riprap that is meant to absorb wave energy so that that energy doesn't eat away at the flood control levee that is right to the left of those large boulders. As you can see, riprap is, excuse me, great at absorbing wave energy, but not so great at providing habitat quality. So an alternative is shown here on the right side, which is a photo of the Oro Loma Horizontal Levee Research Site, which installed a closed loop horizontal levee system that really proved the concept that you can provide that wave attenuation with a horizontal levee, as well as provide additional benefits that include habitat enhancement and wastewater polishing treatment. Next slide, please. So the project is located within the Palo Alto Baylands, and it's shown here on the slide and circled in red. It's adjacent to the Regional Water Quality Control Plant, the Palo Alto Airport, Bigsby Park, as well as Harbor Marsh that leads to the San Francisco Bay. It's also right in the middle of a pretty large network of public access trails. And so on either side of the project site, you'll see like a stark line that's indicating the public access trail that not only goes through the project site currently, but also is connected on either side of the project site. Next slide, please. Here are some photos of the current conditions of the project site. The photo on the left is taken from Harbor Road looking out towards the bay. If you look kind of hard and kind of midway up the photo on the left, you'll see like a white line. That is the public access trail as it currently stands today. And I hope you'll also notice that currently the habitat is made up of poor quality ruderal habitat. There's a lot of large grassland weeds that currently make up the project site. The photo on the right is a photo taken from the existing public access trail looking south. And you'll see the trail is that white line that is going along the photo. And to the left of that is the bay and tidal marsh. And to the right is that poor quality upland habitat. And you'll notice that that trail serves as a stark divider between pretty good salt marsh habitat to the left and pretty poor habitat to the right. There's not a lot of connectivity. So if species want to go from the tidal marsh currently on the left over to the upland habitat, say for high tide refugia, they would have to cross over that open trail area and possibly be exposed to predators and so forth. Next slide, please. So as you know, the Baylands sees roughly 700,000 visitors a year. The Marshfront Trail, which is a part of it's part of the trail. It is the trail in the project site currently. That was built right around 2000. It's part of the larger Bay Trail. This site is also within the BCDC jurisdiction. BCDC stands for Bay Conservation and Development Commission. So it's within their jurisdiction amongst other resource agencies. So in order to do this project, we will have to get permits from BCDC as well as others. The trail is roughly 500 linear feet. And this area also, mainly the area to the right in the photo, the area of Harbor Marsh, is known to support endangered species, particularly Ridgway's rails and the salt marsh harvest mouse. Next slide, please. So the main components of the project include an underground treated wastewater pipeline that's going to be run along Embarcadero and Harbor roads. We're also going to need to replace the Renzel Marsh pump as part of this project. That treated pipeline is then going to connect to the horizontal levee, which is roughly 300 linear feet long, which will be on the bay side of a 500 linear foot berm. We're seeking to plant the horizontal levee with native species to create that ecotone slope, as well as diversify the habitats out there. We're going to realign the public Marshfront Trail to be closer to the road, further away from the bay, to the top of the new berm that we create and connected to the trails on either side of the project site. We're also seeking to install educational signage as well as conduct community science activities at the location. Next slide, please. Here's another location of the full project site. So the underground pipeline that I spoke of that will be bringing treated wastewater to the site is shown in blue at the top of that figure. It's going to connect within the wastewater treatment plant and then be transported down Embarcadero Road, down Harbor Road, and then over to the main project site that's shown in green in this figure. Next slide, please. Here's a profile rendering of the horizontal levee after it would be built. Starting from the left side, we have Harbor Road, which we're not touching as part of this project. It's going to remain as is. We'll have roughly 50 feet between Harbor Road and the new berm that we are going to create. That's shown in gray in the middle of that figure. On top of that new berm will be the public access trail, which we will also restrict and focus public access by a small fence as well as screening vegetation. Following the public access trail, continuing down towards the right on the graphic, we will have the underground irrigation network that will then feed the native species that we are planting all along that slope from the tip of that berm all the way down to the end of that ecotone section, where it will then connect to the existing marsh. Next slide, please. Here's an overview of how we are relocating the trail, because we do recognize that relocation of the trail and maintaining public access is a very important part of the project. The existing trail is shown on this figure in red. It goes along the bayside perimeter of the project site. In order to reconnect the habitat as well as limit public access to the habitat itself, we are pulling back the trail closer to the road, and that's shown in brown. So there will still be a significant space between the new trail and the road. Part of that is to save space for the larger levee improvement projects that are going to be coming down in the future, so that when those larger levee projects are built, they don't have to destroy this pilot project that we are creating. So they could come in right behind this pilot project and smoothly connect to the habitat that we have already created. Next slide, please. So there were a lot of considerations that were brought into the relocation of the trail. In particular, we wanted to make sure that both sides of the project site remain connected to the other trail networks around it. We wanted to limit the creation of informal trails by people who are very curious and want to experience the bay, and also create substantial no access areas to ensure that species have full utilization of the horizontal levee and the new habitat that we are enhancing. Similarly, we wanted to increase the habitat connectivity and limit observation offshoots into the habitat, all with the idea of limiting impacts to species use of the site. Similarly, we're using screening vegetation as a physical barrier to promote habitat use, promoting tangential approach to wildlife versus head-on, because that's been proven to be less stressful for the wildlife. We're going to be limiting raptor perching opportunities, as well as providing educational areas and maintaining access for maintenance of the trail. Next slide, please. So in the end, when the horizontal levee pilot project is completely built and all of the plants are grown up, we are expecting increases in marsh habitat, increase in a diversity of habitats at the site, including wet meadow, freshwater marsh, and riparian scrub. We're going to be increasing the refugia habitat available for key species such as Ridgway's rail and the salt marsh harvest mouse. We are increasing habitat connectivity, and we are also going to be increasing community engagement. Next slide, please. Speaking of community engagement, I just wanted to touch real quick and summarize for you all of the work that we've done to engage our community on this project to date, as well as some ideas that we have to continue that engagement moving forward. So since 2018, this has been a very long project. Since 2018, since the very start of the project, we have conducted more than 20 outreach activities within our community. And those activities included bio blitzes, king tide walks, as well as specific workshops with local non-governmental organizations and community members. For the future, we're looking to add to those activities by including educational signage, community plantings with Save the Bay. So we are going to engage the community as part of the construction of the project by getting the community to actually plant and install the plants themselves. We are working with Nuestra Casa, who works in East Palo Alto, on community science activities, as well as with environmental volunteers on king tide walks and bio blitzes. And then help us monitor the growth over time by taking photos with their phone and submitting those to us over time. Next slide, please. Recently, we just completed our CEQA evaluation for the project, and we found that it qualifies for a Section 1533.3, Class 33 exemption for small habitat restoration projects. In order to qualify for that exemption, the project has to be 5 acres or less. It has to have no significant adverse impacts on endangered, rare, or threatened species or their habitat, no hazardous materials at or around the site, and the project has to be found to not result in impacts that are significant when viewed in connection with the effects of other past, current, and reasonably foreseeable future projects. Next slide, please. And then lastly, I just wanted to provide a quick update on the next steps for this project. We are going to continue our collaboration with the San Francisco Estuary Partnership. We just got a grant awarded to get us through to complete construction. Yay! And so this project from design all the way through construction would be built at very little cost to the city, because we've been very successful in obtaining grants from the Environmental Protection Agency as well as the Coastal Conservancy. So in order to stay on track and ultimately construct the project in 2024, we need to get a park improvement ordinance this year, as well as finalize the design and permitting from the resource agencies. And then also, we're going to be doing a few additional outreach activities with the community, including a BioBlitz that's coming up on April, I think it's April 14th, might be 15th, as well as a King Tide Walk in summer of this year. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up, I'm currently seeking the recommendation from the Commission for Council to adopt and approve a park improvement ordinance, which was included as attachment A of the staff report that would authorize improvements to the Palo Alto Baylands as part of the horizontal levee pilot project. And then just to summarize and remind you, the key components of the horizontal levee pilot project are listed there on the screen. And they include the berm fronted by a horizontal levee that is planted with native species to create an ecotone slope, a realignment of the public marshfront trail to the top of the new berm, the installation of an underground treated wastewater pipeline that runs along Embarcadero and Harbor Roads, the replacement of Renzel Marsh pump at the treatment plant, as well as the installation of educational signage and community science activities. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Sam, for the presentation. Thank you for the clarity offered in this. Some great photos, making it easy to understand, and a list of specific changes that are being included. Appreciate it. Before we go to commission, or I guess first we can see if there's any clarifying questions of the commissioners, not actual comments. We'll look to go comments from members of the public before we do that. If any members of the public would like to comment on this item, now's a good time to raise your hand via Zoom, and we'll get to you soon. Or if you're in person, please have a speaker card forward. Any clarifying questions? Okay, then do we have any members of the public who would like to speak on this?
I'm seeing no hands raised and no speaker cards for this topic.
Okay, then we'll move forward with commissioner comments and questions. Who would like to start? Joy?
Yeah.
Please.
Thanks, Samantha. Thanks for the presentation. It's great to hear about the EPA grants. I was going to ask you to talk a little bit more on the level of partnership that you mentioned on, I think, your slide 3. I love the picture you used for your second slide. And I was also going to ask how long the relocation, the trail relocation would take, just so we can know what the impact would be for visitors to the Bayland. And then also curious to know if you could talk a little bit more about the community science activities you mentioned. Thank you.
Can I go ahead and respond to that at this point?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry. So the collaboration between us and the San Francisco Estuary Partnership has been a long collaboration ever since the inception of this project. We have been collaborating and working very closely with San Francisco Estuary Partnership. They're actually the reason why we've been able to get so many not only grant applications submitted, but also I think it's really due to their talented grant writers that we were actually able to receive so many grants for this project and keep it going. So that's been a very long running collaboration between us and them. And from the very beginning, we've gotten a lot of support from the Environmental Protection Agency in particular, as well as the Coastal Conservancy. So the regional importance of this project, I think, has been well supported and documented ever since 2018. A lot of people are looking at this and really hoping that it gets built soon so that they can then feed it into their sea level rise planning that they're trying to do, especially wastewater treatment plants that are along the bayside throughout San Francisco Bay. The other item you had was, I remember there was a community engagement question. And then there was something before that, though. I apologize. What was the other item?
The trail relocation length, the duration.
Correct. That's right. So the whole construction for all of the construction for the project is estimated to take about 100 working days. And that includes the pipeline installation. So really, we have yet to figure out the sequencing of the entire construction project, but the part that really impacts trail users will mainly be about 100 working days. So we're talking about a few months between 2023 and 2024 that trail users would be asked to be routed around the project site. And then the other item regarding community engagement and what the community science activities are looking like. For those ones, we're still outlining the details, but what we know for right now is that Nuestra Casa is very interested in engaging and organizing the community to come out to the project site and learn about sea level rise adaptation, wastewater treatment, as well as nature, as well as like restoration and habitat enhancement. The other items that we're looking to include in those activities are hands-on experience with collecting a sample of water from the site and then testing it for some simple water quality parameters like pH, perhaps turbidity, and then maybe have it analyzed for metals, and then engage those same community members in looking at the data and really getting a better sense of what it means to monitor water quality and then apply it to a site such as this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Krebs?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation, and I appreciate what the chair said about the pictures, the before and after, what it's going to look like. It was really, really helpful in reading the report. I really appreciate the collaboration with the other agencies, and I'm just curious about the total cost, the financial cost. There was some dollar figures mentioned, but do you have a total cost yet of what this will be?
We do have an estimate based on the 60% design. Let me bring that up real quick. One second. I don't want to give you a wrong number. So total design is about $1.4 million. And then construction is about $3.8 million. That's the estimate that we have right now. And that includes the monitoring that we have to do, as well as obtaining permits and so forth.
And then how long after the project is completed, I think you said 24, how long do you continue to monitor the project?
Yes, great question. So we're still working with the resource agencies to determine how long they want us, how long they will require us to monitor this site. But oftentimes with Palo Alto, and especially in a pilot project like this, we will go above and beyond that required by the resource agencies. For right now, with the resource agencies, we're looking at about a 5-year monitoring period. But as we move along in the project, and if we continue to have interesting data and interesting questions pop up, we'll definitely be extending that. I can see that easily be extended to 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I like your permanent pilot project. I'm going to steal that term. I think that's a great use of staff resources and time to get some urgent needs incorporated flawlessly into future projects that you anticipate. So I really appreciate that. I think this is a good example of a lot of the ingredients that we look for in projects. So taking advantage of grant funding is mentioned at these meetings, if not every meeting, most meetings, and also community engagement and education. And I think this does a good job of balancing the human use with the need to protect the natural environment and the habitat and the species. So nothing but kudos from me. I do have a quick question on the Raptors perching opportunities. Is that a problem that is being eliminated, or is that just something that you take into consideration when you're making changes to these types of areas? I'm just curious.
Yeah, for this particular site, it's more of just a component that we have to keep in mind anytime we're installing signage and fencing out there. Currently, there's like one sign out there, and there's no fencing. So anytime we're doing that, like installing a post or something, we need to be mindful that we're not creating a perching area for raptors.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Who's next?
Okay.
Ellis.
Yeah, I'll jump on board as everyone else. It's a great presentation and the report, which between the report and your presentation made everything very understandable and was able to put something that I guess that could be very complex in a very easy manner to understand. I also love the fact that throughout the document in your presentation you referred to educational signage, so that hikers and others are know what's happening and how it's enhancing the habitat, while at the same time maintaining public access. I do hope that the signage is prominently displayed and shared with educators. And I guess the question there would be is, have you sort of received any input or shared your signage with educators to get their input to make sure that it's a learning process, I guess, as we go on?
Yeah, very, very good question and great point. We have not come up with the content yet for the signs. We do know in a very general sense what we want each sign to cover. For example, we want at least one sign that covers the technicalities of the project, one that looks at sea level rise adaptation, and connect that to nature-based sea level rise adaptation strategies. And then we would like to have a sign that connects the location with its historical use by Native Americans in the area. But beyond that, we have yet to determine specifics. So engaging in educators is a great idea. We do have it planned to engage with the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone on at least one of the signs, but we can definitely reach out to educators for input on the other ones, especially about like the technicalities of the project.
That'll be great. And then one last question on the, there was an area where the, I guess the trail is going to be rerouted. And it looks like there's going to be some, I guess you're losing, how much are you losing, I guess? And the rerouting, of course, has to happen, but just curious as to how much of the trail is being lost as a result of the rerouting.
Yeah, we're actually not losing much of the trail at all. It's currently about a 500 linear foot trail, and then we're going to be installing roughly the same linear feet of trail. We are going to be extending the official trail, which gives us additional footage from the on the slide that's being shown right now. It's on the left-hand side. You'll see the existing trail and brown that leads up to a green circle. We're going to be installing an official part of the trail to that platform and then connecting it back down to the brown trail there. And so that gives us a little additional footage, which matches what we would be losing. Okay.
And last question, I promise. During the time that you're doing the work, will that trail be, I guess, set up first before your work start, or kind of what's kind of the progress, I guess, that will be made as far as how people will have access to the trail during the time that you're doing the work?
Yeah, so people will not have access to the trail while we're constructing the project. It's essentially right in the middle of the project site, and it'll be a little bit too dangerous for people to access it during construction. But the plan is to route people further up. I don't have a good graphic of that, but essentially on the corner of Embarcadero Road and Harbor Road, we're going to route people to cross the street and use the sidewalk that's across the street on Harbor Road to then connect over to the Bixby Park trail that's on the other side of the project site.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good job.
Thank you.
Shani?
Thank you, Samantha. And I know how long you've been working on it. I remember presentations to some ecology groups about 5 years ago, and appreciate that the project included a lot of the input that has been provided by those groups and others. And it looks much better than it looked then, and thank you so much. And congratulations for getting the construction grant. I have a few questions, and some of them I've asked before, but I think I should ask them again. So, and I also really thank you for pulling the trail away from the road. Few questions. What is the trail constructed? Is that like decomposed granite, or what are you expecting it to be?
Yeah, I believe we just got the preferred component to be base rock, but we're still in the between 60% and final design. So we're still working out a few of those details with our parks group. But I believe at this point it's going to be made out of base rock.
Okay, thank you. The second question is about parking for and access on the Measure East site. Parking obviously is allowed in parks, and but I was thinking that in this case, if there is a way to find a parking lot, maybe one of the offices over there on Embarcadero Way, or a way to provide parking that is not in the park for the people who come to work. I think that's really much better if they actually park in a regular asphalt parking lot and not on the Measure East site. And I would encourage you to look for an alternative for that. And the last question is about plant, and I know it's a little early and just something to think about. Planting seed mix, what you put in that seed mix really makes a huge difference in how well you can maintain after you plant the seed mix and it grows. And some plants that I think are very common in restoration projects create fire hazards, and then they have to be mowed at the time that the birds are trying to nest in them. And so, and also they can take over other plants. And Elymus tritocoides is one of the most aggressive plants, and in restoration plants, and I can show you if you want, or direct you to it, where you can see some of those restoration plant projects. After 3 or 4 years, the only way is to like go and mow it really early on, or it becomes a fire issue. So I would encourage you not to include that plant. It also chokes out every other plant that you put in your mix. So eventually you get a monoculture. And a lot of the planners don't know this because, you know, at first it looks lovely, but 3 years later it's a mess and it's really difficult to control. And by then the planners are usually not there anymore. So please take that into account and try not to include that specific. It's a native plant, but it's a problem plant. I think that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. And again, the grants that you sought, just a tremendous job on that. And I really appreciate this project. And I do like that we're a city that is trying some new things and able to pilot something that could be a model for other communities. I do not have any other questions, as those were anything I had wondered was asked by my fellow commissioners. But again, compliments on a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you again, Sam. I know this project's been a passion of yours for many years, and I appreciate you sharing your passion on this project with us for many years now. Echoing the comments of others, there's a lot to love about this project in terms of the funding, the outreach, the overall care. I'm particularly excited about just the overall goal of the project and the value of creating an experiment that's worthwhile and that'll be generating valuable data for us on a regional basis. That's awesome. Couple questions. In terms of the 100 working days, for the closure for interruption of trails and things like that. Is that 5 days a week during the work week? And then it's open on weekends?
So it is a 5-day work week, but it will remain closed to trail users on the weekend as well, mainly for safety concerns. It's the staging of the construction is going to be right on the project site as well. And so it's not going to be safe for people to use on the weekends. The one exception would be if we sequence the pipeline work separate from the work that's done at the main project site. In that case, the trail will remain open so long as we're not actively constructing on the main project site.
Okay, so then as far as the overall closure will be more than 100 days. And I think when this goes to city council for approval, it'll be helpful to be more direct in terms of the consecutive period of time it'll be closed. And then just in terms of the overall activity level during construction, can you give us an idea how many people will there be, how many cars, what's the noise level going to be like? And I know it varies depending on what's going on.
Yeah, so it's a pretty small and pretty quick construction project. Management people as well as active construction workers. And so with that small of a crew, we're looking at maybe 15 cars at any given time. The noise level isn't expected to be all that great. We are taking special precautions to provide noise attenuation when we're doing the pipeline work. So we will be putting up like a noise barrier between the construction and the bay, mainly to protect and ensure species can continue to use harbor marsh while we're doing construction. But in terms of the the public, the noise level is expected to be no greater than what is currently out there with the airport and the flyovers that occur quite frequently. It just will happen perhaps a little bit more frequently during the day.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And so you have a nice list of what we're looking to approve in the PIO. It's kind of at a high level, and I think that's by intent to give you flexibility based on what you hear from other agencies in terms of changing details here and there.
Correct.
Could you comment on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're still in between the 60% and the final design, and that's on purpose because we will need to incorporate feedback from Army Corps, BCDC, as well as the Regional Water Board to ensure that the way that we construct it and the way that we design it meets the needs of those resource agencies and adequately protects the environment around it. And so in order to continue with the project and move it forward, we need to keep the park improvement ordinance somewhat vague so that we can still iron out those details.
Okay, so then the sequence of things is City Council would approve the park improvement ordinance, and then you'd be continuing discussions with the other agencies to finalize the plan and get your 90 and 100% design.
Correct.
Great. That's all the questions I have. Does anyone have any follow-up question or further comments?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second the motion. Can we have a roll call vote, please? I was assuming you don't want to speak to the motion.
This project is a pilot project that we wish to see more of, and we want to see it expanded. The staff took, as far as I can see, every comment, with the exception of the parking, into consideration and did a good job of integrating that into a project that gets support from the community, even East Palo Alto, and from scientists. And I think it's a good project to move forward with.
As the seconder, I'll just comment that that's high praise to be satisfying nearly all of Shawnee's requests and comments. And I support the project wholeheartedly. Any other comments before we go to a vote? Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote now, please?
Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemare,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribs,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes,
Commissioner Oche.
Yes.
Chair, that's a 7-0 vote.
Thank you once again, Sam, for joining us and presenting to us. And we look forward to following the success of this project as it continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is the Wellness Recreation Center. Kristen O'Kane with us. You're welcome.
Yeah, my pleasure to introduce Kristen O'Kane, although I think you all know her. She's the Director of Community Services Department. Thanks so much, Kristen, for making this presentation.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you and be back in front of the commission. So I'm going to be sharing some information on feedback that we received from the community on the proposed Recreation Wellness Center. Next slide. So just a little bit of background, and this is in the staff report, and I'm sure you're all familiar, but just to recap. So the Parks, Trails, Natural Open Space, and Recreation Master Plan did identify the need for indoor recreation space, and also identified a public gymnasium as a high priority project needing further study. Just to clarify to everyone again that the city does not own any gymnasiums. We do have our community centers that have space for things like fitness classes, but we don't have any gymnasiums that we own. The gyms that we do use are owned by the school district at Cubberley, and we lease those from the school district, and then we rent them out to different organizations for programs and activities. So recognizing this need and I guess desire to have, more gym space and something that's city owned, the PRC, as you know, heard the ad hoc presentation in November 2021 and supported investigating a new public gymnasium. We've since changed that term gymnasium to a recreation wellness center, just to better reflect that it would be provide more than just gymnasium space like basketball or weightlifting. It would be really a community space providing overall wellness opportunities to the community. The PRC and Darren went to council in March of last year, March 2022, and council passed the motion on the next slide, which was to direct staff and the PRC to conduct public outreach on a new gym, listing these specific items that should be included in the public outreach, and that the PRC was also to investigate fundraising. So the community feedback that we received was really focused on the gym features, both from a physical standpoint of what a gym would have in the facility, but then also what types of programs the wellness center could provide to the community. It also began the discussion on location of the gym, but some of the others like cost estimates, funding, things like that were not discussed. Next slide. So the community meeting was on March 7th, which is ironically exactly 1 year since council approved the PRC and staff to begin investigating or begin the public outreach. So the questions that we asked, like I said, were really focused on what programs and amenities could be at the gym. So at the community meeting, we didn't have a huge turnout, but we had, I want to say about 20. Not everyone signed in on the sign-in sheet. So I think it was about 20 individuals came, and they were asked to rank and prioritize some predetermined, in this case, amenities that would be in a gym. So the results of that were those that were identified as having the most benefit to the community would be a multi-use gym. And this would be a place for basketball, badminton, table tennis, you name it. It could be, and it could evolve over time too. I think that's important. Flexible multi-use space that could be used for different types of uses, space for seniors, and indoor pickleball. Some of the others that we asked folks to rank but were lower on the priority are listed below: space for teens, cardio equipment, and locker rooms. The orange there is the answers, frequent answers to open-ended question, the open-ended question that we asked, which was, what are your other ideas? We heard swimming pool, partitions to divide space, which provides for more different types of programming, have it be soundproof, be available for an emergency shelter if needed, and also a gathering space for events. Next slide, please. And then when we get into what programs would benefit the community, adult fitness ranked at the top, followed by, again, indoor pickleball, open play, drop-in times, youth fitness, and this should say league sports, not league fitness. That was my error. So league sports. Other things like special interest classes were were ranked less beneficial, and special interest classes include things like it could be a guide to retirement class or a Lego class for kids or something that's not necessarily physical fitness, but still provides a benefit. Martial arts, toddler programs, and indoor soccer. And then if you look in the orange box there, those are some of the open answers to the open-ended question on what else would you like to see. Next slide. So one of the questions we asked was, although a location has not been identified, Greer Park has meets a lot of the needs that for placement of a recreation wellness center, and has been identified as a possible location. So we asked if Greer Park were selected, what would be some of the biggest issues? And these are ranked in order of one being what we heard the most, so parking, access by public transit, and you can see the rest there. Some of the other comments we heard was just the not centrally located, that it was too far away, and parking seemed to be a common theme that we heard for this question. Next slide. So then we move to the open town hall survey. So we, following the meeting or on the same day as the meeting, we opened a survey on our website to the community. We actually had really good turnout. We had almost 400 respondents. The registered and unregistered, registered means they provided their name, their location, possibly their age, so we can do a little demographic look into where people were coming from. But they didn't have to do that. So some people just answered the questions but didn't provide additional information. So this is on the left, this map shows where people lived or live who responded to the survey. And again, these are just the registered responses. So it's not the full 388 people, it's 114. So you can see that the darker orange is where most of the survey respondents live. And Greer Park is like right below the Y in Bixby. So those two neighborhoods had the most. There was only 2 respondents that were outside of Palo Alto completely. And then the lighter the shade, the fewer the people. And then the bar graph is the ages. So most people, or a lot of people, chose not to share their age. I totally understand. I don't like to share my age either. But it looks like most people who did share their age were in their age range of 50 to 79 years old. So online survey results, we asked the same questions and we got pretty much the same results. So with a difference in the most benefit, indoor pickleball ranked higher than it did in the in-person survey, but the same four ranked the highest for most beneficial as far as types of amenities that would be in a recreation wellness center. We also heard, I think this orange box is from the previous one. So we'll skip that. So next slide, please. I showed this one a little differently because the Open Town Hall program provided me with this beautiful pie chart, so I went with it. So you can see what was ranked highest. Indoor pickleball ranked the highest on the online survey. Adult fitness, open, drop and play, youth fitness and sports, and special interest classes ranked high as well. Next slide. So some of the biggest issues, again, same thing that we heard in the in-person survey, with the exception of 4 and 5 were reversed before, but very similar ranking and answers to this question as well. And then there was an open-ended question. We received a lot of different comments. Some of the things we heard a lot on the left side, climbing wall and gymnastics was repeatedly included as something the respondents would like to see in a recreation wellness center. On-site childcare, so people could drop off their kids and work out or participate in a program while their kids were still there. Another one that's worth mentioning is adaptive fitness, so fitness programs for people with disabilities, and then evening times so people can come after work, and just sort of recognizing that not everyone can come at noon or 10 a.m. and participate in a class or program. Some of the concerns, and we did hear this at the community meeting as well, it was a question of why are we not focusing on Cubberley first, or why wouldn't you put this at Cubberley? And I can answer that if any of you are interested, but the other is just worried about car break-ins and competing with the YMCA, who might have similar programs. So next slide, Javad. And so the next steps, and I put a question mark here because I think this needs a little bit more discussion or contemplation on what our next steps might be. So of course, we need to continue investigating what the best and right location is, and continue engaging with the community on the entire proposal. What I think might be a good next step as far as going to the city council is to do a letter of intent. And I believe you saw one with First Tee. Did that come to the PRC?
Yes.
Okay. So letter of intent is just a non-binding sort of commitment from the city and another party to say, yes, we are interested in pursuing this. We will work with you to pursue this, but we're not obligated anyway to build something or fund something or proceed with the project. But in instances where an organization wants to fundraise for a project, this letter of intent is useful for that because it shows potential donors that the city is interested and supports the project. So this was done, like I said, with First Tee. It was done with the Junior Museum and Zoo. I think it might be the right next step here with respect to going to the city council. I am open to other suggestions on what might be the next steps, where we go from here. And I think that is the end of my presentation. So any questions?
Thank you, Kristen. Let me first mention that if there's any members of the public who'd like to speak, now is a good time to fill out a speaker card or raise your hand online via Zoom. We'll get to you momentarily. Do any commissioners have any clarifying questions before we go to comments from the public, and particularly members of the ad hoc? Is there anything that you'd like to add on a clarifying level before we go to the public? Okay, then let's see if there's any public comments on this. And I see we have at least 4 hands raised. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Ken Horowitz. I'm a longtime.
Excuse me, we'll allow Javad to introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Chair, we do have one in-person speaker with 5 hands raised online. Our first in-person speaker is Ken Horowitz. Ken, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ken Horowitz. Longtime resident, over 40 years in Palo Alto. A little bit about my history. I have always been a member of a recreational facility, and for many years a member of the Page Mill Y, which was off of Page Mill Road, and unfortunately was closed in about 2014. We tried to keep it open. It was a great location, plenty of parking, had racquetball courts, and easy to access the bus. We tried to get Jim Keene to work with the landlord and the Silicon Valley Y to keep it open. They chose not to. So I joined then the Ross Road YMCA. Couple of thoughts on this one. I did not fill out the survey. So many surveys that come from the city that after a while you kind of say to yourself, can't do everyone. But I wonder now in 2023 whether there is a shortage of indoor recreation spaces. As I said, I go to the Ross Road YMCA. It's pretty empty a lot of the times. People have given up going to the Y. Many residents have bought their own treadmills and Pelotons, et cetera, and they basically have not come back to the Y. And so to start a new facility, I don't think it's necessary at this point. However, if you want to put a new facility, then I think Cubberley is the best site. Now, fortunately, recently, within the last 2 weeks, Palo Alto Unified School District made an offer to the city for an additional 7 acres. So now that the city has a possibility of owning 15 acres of the Cubberley site, which could include the gym there, Gym A and B, which is closed. It's been closed now for over a year. Kind of interesting. There's a big sign there that says out of order. Will repair in the morning. If any of you see the post tomorrow, I sent a mystery photo. I don't know if they'll publish it, but the door that says out of order will repair in the morning. So it's kind of interesting. But they do have the gym there and they have the pavilion there. So if you can encourage the city with their additional acreage to put a gym, that's the best place. I mean, you've already got a gym there and you've already got a pavilion there and you could put the pickleball stuff there. So I would encourage you to go that route. So thank you for your time and appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Justin. Justin, you've been unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, hello. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay.
Yes.
Great. My name is Justin Kitch. I'm a longtime was an athlete at Stanford who got injured, never got to play basketball. And so I started coaching basketball as a way to deal with my disappointment in not being able to play at Stanford. And so I've been involved with coaching baseball and basketball in Palo Alto since 1990. of 33 years. Became a tech entrepreneur and was quite fortunate and was able to start giving money to a foundation that supported youth sports in the area, which eventually started an organization called Force City. And Force City is the largest youth basketball program in Palo Alto. And actually on the peninsula, we have over 1,000 kids that we serve. Almost all of them are Palo Alto residents. Over 85% are Palo Alto residents, ages kindergarten through 8th grade. We rent gym facilities anywhere we can find them, mostly from PAUSD schools. We put over $200,000 into the school district every year in rentals, and we still don't have enough gyms to serve all of our kids. We have tried to rent from Cubberley, but since the closures, as someone else mentioned, of the smaller gyms, it's very difficult to rent Cubberley, and Cubberley is really not an appropriate facility. It's not a modern gym facility for what we need with as many kids as we have in our program and how we use the gym. We're desperately eager for a gym to be built in Palo Alto. I think I wouldn't say the word embarrassment, but definitely disappointing that a city of Palo Alto stature does not have a modern gym facility. You just have to go down the street in Menlo Park to the Arriaga Center, which replaced the Burgess Center, to see the kind of facility that we should have in our city. I've offered already to some of the ad hoc committee members that our organization would be willing to help run the fundraising and also the facilitation and operation of the community services at the gym. We have over 120 volunteers that work in our organization, as well as full-time staff members. And so I just would love to do anything that I can to help encourage the city and the council to expediently put a modern gym into our city. I can assure you that it would be utilized. I know of over a dozen organizations that are always trying to rent gyms. And not only that, you can charge quite a bit to rent the gyms. I'm sure you're aware of that, but these days a modern gym can go for $200 per court for basketball facilities. You can also rent out the yoga rooms and other fitness areas. So I think there's a very strong case to be made that it's a net positive in the operational side of things. And I'm less familiar on the building side, but assuming that we could put the finances together for that, I think it's a fantastic idea. So thank you for considering it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Winter Dellenbach.
Winner, you have 3 minutes to speak.
I have a couple of things to speak on. The first thing is, if this is really going to be a wellness center, then it's going to take a lot of determination, because this can easily be indoor pickleball and basketball. And if there's going to be things for adults and seniors, Pilates, yoga, things that speak to an aging body, aerobics, things like that keep us healthy and well as we're aging, which I am, then there has to be some real determination to keep space for that and to really keep this at a community level. So I really encourage that as we move on. And I'm sad that this may only, I would like to think that this could fit at Mitchell Park or Cubberley, but it may not, perhaps only at Greer Park may it fit if this works out at all. I don't know. I was surprised to find out that in my own research that Greer Park is 1 acre larger than Mitchell Park. That shocked me, but it's true. I want to talk to a process issue that I'm upset about. And I saw an item in the newspaper that alerted me to it. I'm going to encourage the 3 PRC commissioners that are on this nonprofit to resign from it and to replace, and they should be replaced with residents, from Palo Alto residents. There's nearly 1/2 of the PRC commission is on a nonprofit that is raising money for this wellness center. And while it's laudatory to try to raise money for a wellness center, it is not okay that sitting PRC members, this is nearly half of the commission, 3 members of the commission are on a
nonprofit that is raising money for this. And what this does is it may not be a legal conflict of interest, but because it doesn't involve financial gain for any of you, but it certainly badly skews your objectivity. And it's important that you be objective. You've just gotten in front of your commission, and you have next steps to do. And you can't, you have already taken a position by serving on this nonprofit. So you need to get off the nonprofit, and so that you can be objective as you hear public testimony from me right now, other members of the public, and other commissioners, and get information from staff. So I think you've overstepped yourself, and please reconsider. I'm disappointed. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lynn. Lynn, you've been unmuted. You have 3 minutes.
I'm a little concerned about the thought of, at this point, not maybe in the future, but this thought of building a wellness center at this time, partly because I don't see how we're going to finance the ongoing classes, for example, so they're actually affordable. And I think it's much harder to get people to work at the rates that are paid for many of these centers. And I want to give 2 cases. I did call Menlo Park several years ago because I was looking for a class, and I spoke to, I guess, the assistant manager, and was assured there was nothing available. Not that there wasn't room for it, they just didn't have anything. And the second example would be Los Altos has just built a large community center and opened up their grant center as well. And again, they can't keep it open because they don't have the money to run the place once they build it. So they built the beautiful buildings without thinking of the yearly cost to the city to run the place and to employ people in classes that are affordable. Their rents were so high that the people who I had previously taken classes from there, none of them actually returned. They said they just plain can't afford it. So I am hoping that if you're going to pursue this, that you look very closely at the financials of both those places. And it may be there are groups that can rent for $200 or whatever the gentleman said. But in fact, it doesn't really work out in actuality at either of those places when I tried to find classes for myself as a senior. And I know the Junior Museum had very high hopes, and there were all kinds of paper speculations of all the money that would roll in. And yet, what, 50% of the budget is now supported by the city of Palo Alto, in addition to $1 million to build dinosaurs that might attract some people to come to our city. My friends who were coming added it up and said it was $100 just to bring the 3 grandchildren. So they did not come, and said this is really not affordable for lots of families. It may be for certain Palo Alto families, but many families really couldn't afford it. So I hope you'll look at the financials very closely this time. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sherry. Sherry, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm Sherry Furman. I'm chair of the Midtown Residents Association. Although I'm not speaking on their behalf tonight, I just simply wanted to let you know that I've lived in the area for 40 years, so I know Greer Park very well. And I also know the drawbacks a lot. First of all, I'm concerned about taking up parkland, even though this is recreation, for a building and a parking lot, because the situation at Greer Park, there's no parking now. And with the housing that's going in, The nearby streets are going to be taken up with overflow parking. There's no parking along West Bay Shore there. And so it's just, I don't see the proposed site as really feasible. There's no public transportation. You can sort of bike there if you're a kid, but with pickleball players, I don't think those are kids. I think those are adults that are going to want to be using that. And I'm also concerned that with the location that's planned, you will end up destroying Scott Meadow, which some of you may remember the Residents Association worked very hard several years ago to get that pile of dirt turned into a memorial for the founders of our Residents Association there on Colorado. And Rotary worked with the residents to get that done. And I would really hate to see that destroyed because you're going to have to put in a parking lot. So I really encourage you to look at Mitchell Park or some other locations. One thing that I believe Ann Cribbs suggested was the soccer fields at El Camino and Page Mill, that in some towns, they actually build a community center with the soccer fields on the roof. So I know we're just renting that land, but at the same time, that may be an alternative. So I'm just concerned about the conditions at Greer Park with it being difficult to get to. There's blind entrances trying to get onto West Bay Shore from Amarillo. So I'm not convinced that that's the greatest site. I understand the constraints of the Gish site, although that would be my first preference. My second preference would probably be somewhere at Mitchell Park, since it is more centrally located and has public transportation access and bike lanes and things like that. So anyway, thank you for listening to my concerns.
Our next speaker is John Williams. You've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to speak. John Williams, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Chair Greenfield and Commissioners. I'm Monica Williams, co-founder and past president of the Palo Alto Pickleball Club. I don't want to take too much of your time, but on behalf of 500 Palo Alto residents who are members of our club, I want to express our support for a health and wellness center for the city of Palo Alto. We currently are looking for an indoor space to play pickleball because the pavilion at Cubberley is no longer available. Some of us have been able to play at the JCC, where they have lined the basketball courts with pickleball lines to make it a multi-use area. Many of our members are senior citizens who would also benefit from the use of exercise equipment at a health and wellness center. We wholeheartedly support this project and want to thank everyone who is pushing this forward. You definitely have the support of the Palo Alto pickleball community. Thank you very much. The end.
Our next speaker is Leanna. Leanna, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, thank you. I've been a resident of Palo Alto for 54 years, and I have 3 grandchildren at Palo Alto High School, 2 of whom are in 9th grade and 1 in 11th grade. And I've really been dismayed that these children of our town have to travel miles out of our community to find suitable recreation area. This proposal is outstanding. I think that Greer Park is an excellent location. I'm a realtor. I'm very familiar with all of the space in our community, which we only have a finite amount of space, and we have to maximize what we have. And I think that this location would be very suitable for a gymnasium. There is no facility right now that can be used such as this that is proposed for a wellness and a gymnasium operation. So I heartily support this recommendation. I think we have to move ahead to make plans for the future. Our young people really only have so many places to enjoy such a facility as our adults who could use that, yes, as for pickleball, but for a myriad of other opportunities for recreational use. So I am in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
That completes public comment.
Thank you. And thank you to all the members of the public who joined us this evening to share their comments. Appreciate that. I'd like to turn now to the members of the ad hoc to see if they have comments that they would like to share with us before we go to the rest of the commission for comments and questions. Anne?
Well, I actually will start it off just to say thank you to the staff for the report and for the support over the years, actually, that the ad hoc has been working on this project. Different people joined and different people left, but I am incredibly excited that we've gotten to this point tonight and we can have a discussion with all the commissioners about the questions that we've been talking about for quite a while. If you remember back in 2021, when we came to the commission, we said that there were 3 questions that needed to be asked. One was, what goes in a gym or a wellness center? The second question was, where should that wellness center go? And the third question was, since this was to be a public-private partnership, was there appetite in the community to raise the funds, work with the city to have a partnership and support this effort? And I'm not going to say much more right now tonight, but I'd love to have my fellow ad hoc members speak as well. And then to tell everybody who's sitting up here that I'm really excited to hear what you think. It's really, really important. So I defer now to Nellis and Jeff.
Thank you. And thank you, Darren and Kristen, for your support in this initiative. It's I joined the Park and Rec a year ago, and I think was fortunate enough to be put on an ad hoc that is I think is going to bring value to the city. So pretty exciting project. I think we still have a lot of work to do. That is finding locations and those types of things. So I think the challenge is there. I'm so glad that we've reached out to the community.
Yeah. Just double checking your mic is on.
Yes. Can you not? Oh, can you hear me? That's okay. Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. I can move between the two. Yeah, as the presentation shows, we have a lot of work to do, and it's one of the reasons that we reached out to the community. And it's great to hear some of the feedback coming from our community leaders. And, we hear what you're saying. And like we said, the challenge is to find a location that'll meet everyone's needs and to know, what is it that we would like to have in a facility that should be sort of I think the jewel of the city. So that I'm going to leave it with that and let Jeff jump in.
Yeah, I also am very excited about this project, and I think it really fills a need in our city. And I also appreciate the idea of wellness, and I think that's a very important piece of this facility. Our city is our population. We're very high performing, high stress, high expectation area. And that's for not only the adults, but especially for our young people. And I'm around high school students an awful lot, and I see the stress that they're under. And there needs to be an area for them to recreate, an area for mental and physical wellness. And that's going to be an important component. Just recently, actually, there was a short article in the Palo Alto High School, one of the Palo Alto High School papers, and it brought up intramurals, and it brought up that some of the students were looking to start their own little sports, their own little clubs, because they weren't able to commit to 15 to 20 hours a week that a high school sport may require, but they still wanted to participate in something. They wanted to be part of a league. They wanted to be able to do something. And hopefully that something like this center that we're aiming to build would provide those opportunities for those young people, which are such an important part of our community. So I'm excited to hear what the rest of the commission has to say, and it was great to hear the people who called in and the people who answered the survey, and again, very excited for this this project.
Thank you. Who would like to comment first? Andy?
Sure. Thank you for the presentation and the summary of the community engagement conducted so far. Really helpful to set the stage of what the conversation has been so far and where we're going in the future. I just wanted to, can we go back to slide 11, if that's easy enough? Thanks. I just wanted to echo some of the comments that were made about considerations of programming. So when we're talking about what should, some of the three big questions raised by Commissioner Cribbs of what should be in the wellness center, and figure out the cost of that programming and the staffing. And so if you look at the suggestions, climbing wall, gymnastics, and on-site childcare, all three of those directly fly in the face of number 4, keeping it affordable. Those are very expensive programs to both install as well as staff. So making sure that we're thinking about balancing the need for diversity in programming, which was also mentioned during public comment, with what really is the need in the community. And I'm a big believer that the publicly provided programs should fill the gaps that are not already provided by the private market. And we do have some other gyms and programming provided by private operators in and around the community. And so really making sure that we're addressing the needs and then balancing the non-revenue drivers with what is really needed, where are the gaps, what can the public agency do to fill those gaps. So just when you're figuring out what goes in the center and how is it staffed and programmed, whether it's city staff or a third-party contractor, and sort of how the logistics of that are done. I think it's premature for us to comment on the throwing out locations for parking limitations when we don't even know what it'll look like. We don't know the square footage. We don't know, let's say somebody comes to the table and they want to do an underground parking garage and a soccer field on the roof, and we don't know necessarily what's out there. I do want to caution that we don't let that third question of how do we fundraise for it drive the what does it go and what goes in it and where does it go too much, and making sure that we keep the, I think it's a great first step to make sure that we have the community input first before doing that letter of intent, which I think is a logical next step. But just making sure that we keep the data from the community as well as the concerns that are raised by the commission here tonight at the forefront of those conversations. And then just as a personal note, I agree with Vice Chair Lemaire about sort of needing public spaces for kids. This is stupid, but I wear a sweatshirt that says municipal on it because I'm obsessed with local government, but also because of the story behind it. And it was the person that owns the company wanted to name their company municipal because they believe that municipal basketball courts are what kept them off the street and out of trouble. And they sort of owe their entire life and career to that. And so I think creating public spaces like that is why we're all here on the commission and what we aim to do. And this is a wonderful opportunity to leave that legacy and to provide those spaces for our youth. So just thank you to the ad hoc committee and to staff.
That's a great story. Yeah, we need to keep that story. That's a great, yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Oche?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this. And I just wanted to confirm, are these the only consents we received online? Because I see it's only 4.
Thank you for that question. No, these were the concerns we heard repeatedly. There were more, but generally it was based on, like, the top ones were Cubberley, location, and several people were concerned about the YMCA being impacted by that. So I can follow up with additional information on, I could actually provide you the actual comments that we received. I could email those to the commission if you'd like to see those.
Yes, I'm just cautious that it might be good to have a, an overview of, the exact concerns that, the community is sharing in terms of feedback.
Sure.
So they know we're hearing them and we're also responding to whatever concerns they might have. Overall, I believe in the Wellness Center, and I was there at the community event as well, to, show my solidarity and also learn more about the project. I know it's still too early to know, more details and stuff, but I feel like there's still a lot that needs to be done. And I just want to appreciate the ad hoc committee and the city staff for the work that has gone into this already. One thing that sticks out for me more is, I don't know if it's possible to do a more deep dive, since you said you're going to be sharing the concerns, just to weigh the pros and the cons. What exactly are our concerns? What exactly is the community concerned about? And how can we, address those concerns or fears early on, so that it doesn't, kind of snowball to something else? So those are my major concerns. And I think overall we're doing a great job, and I'm happy to support in any way that I can.
Thank you so much.
Shani?
Thank you. And thanks, I want to thank the ad hoc for getting this far. It's pretty amazing, actually, how much work you've done. But I have some things that echo some of what the public asked about, and also fellow commissioners. So why not Cubberley now that the situation has changed?
Thank you. I knew someone would ask, so thank you, Commissioner. So Cubberley is, it's still a site that was identified early on as a potential location. The thing with Cubberley, again, we own 8 acres. The school district owns 27. There was the letter that we recently received from the school district board inviting the city to submit proposals to acquire additional land. So staff is working on that. That process, getting from today to building something on Cubberley would be likely a much longer time frame. And Cubberley, in addition to the land ownership issue, it's, as you know, an old facility that's not just old above ground, it's old underground. And all of those utilities are connected. They come in from one location. And so to do one piece of Cubberley probably isn't the most efficient, as opposed to doing the entire site as a whole. So it's more of, I think, overall a timing issue. If we were to wait to get to that point, I think the timing would be significantly longer. And you'd have to, it would make more sense to plan whatever city land we have, to plan that as a whole instead of putting something there and then trying to plan around it.
Okay, thank you. We had several people today who expressed concerns, and there's concerns that are on the, that some of them you mentioned, and as Commissioner Oche asked, there's more that maybe not as pervasive. But in my experience, when a project that is this expensive and really doesn't have funding, and not even completely clear about the space, already people actually come here to speak about with concern, those concerns they grow over time. And it makes it more difficult to get to where we want to go. And so I think more clarification on several issues. One is the cost that people have talked about, not only of the project construction, but what do we expect in terms of programming, maintenance? How much is it going to cost over time? It's going to be really critical because concern could grow around that. And some of the things that people really want should probably be there, even if they're expensive. And other things, maybe we do need to look, like Commissioner Brown said, at what is offered by other private enterprises. You know, I've been to the Elks twice, I think, but they have a gym that's empty. And they have a swimming pool that in the evening has 3 swimmers in it, you know, and it's not very well used, even though the facilities are good. So is the market really there? I think people will want to know can we actually build this and how much is it going to cost us over time? So these are sort of, and the last thing is, like, I didn't really think about it before, but Winter Dellenbach asked about people being on a commission and on a nonprofit that is aimed for, so is there a conflict of some sort? Is there something that would potentially prevent them from voting at some point or something? I would like to know this in general, just because we should know, right?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Commissioner Kleinhaus. The ad hoc and Kristen and I met with the city attorney's office to talk through those exact issues. Before nonprofit was even created, we wanted to ensure that we were on sound ground. The attorneys had discussed that and explained that there is not a conflict of interest. This ability for the 3, that's the limit, 3 commissioners to serve on this nonprofit is covered by the government code, section 1090. It's legal for a non-compensated officer of a nonprofit to be on both sides of a potential contract, in this case with the commission and this friends group. There could be a potential conflict of interest once we get into a deeper conversation on locations. And so before that comes, the advice I just got from the attorney's office recently was, when we get to that point, even if we have other things to discuss, we'll separate that out on the agenda, location element of the conversation. We'll in advance have done an analysis of conflict of interest, meaning do we have commissioners who own property or live within 500 feet of some of the proposed areas? And if so, they would recuse themselves from that part of the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, could I respond to the question about, or the comment about market for a gymnasium? Would that be okay? Okay.
Yes, please.
So 2 things I wanted to just share. One is the gyms at Cubberley, even when we have 3 functioning gyms, so these are the basketball court gymnasiums, they are used till 10 o'clock at night, pretty much 7 days a week, if not sometimes longer. There is a huge need for that type of space. We have ballroom dancing groups, basketball, indoor soccer, volleyball, table tennis. It's heavily used. And I think if we were able to have a new gym facility at Cubberley and another gym facility or wellness center somewhere else in Palo Alto, I think they would be both used 7 days a week. I mean, there is such a need. With respect to the things like, I understand like a climbing wall gymnastics, those are expensive to run. Some of our other programs are too. Most of our programs that we offer, if not all, are done right now. Like, so our Boost fitness classes, which are adult fitness classes, are done through contractors. So, and it's done through a revenue share. So we have a contract with someone who provides the class, an instructor, an organization. They get a percentage of the revenue and we get a percentage of the revenue. So the only cost to us is having like a facility attendant there after hours to open the doors, make sure they have everything they need and lock the doors. But I think that our model has worked pretty well using that as opposed to hiring staff who might be offering those programs. So just wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank staff and the ad hoc for all the great work that's gone into pursuing the vision of a community recreation and wellness center. It's great to get the outreach to the public as requested by City Council. It's taken a while. It's the last time this subject has come up for discussion at the commission was 15 months ago. So it's great to get this returning here now. I am very much in favor of finding a way forward for this project. I agree, as others have stated, that a letter of intent is a logical next step. It feels a ways off to me at this point. I'm hearing a lot of very high level discussion about this project, but I was hoping to hear a little bit more detail. It has been a long time since things have come back to us. I don't really have a clear understanding of what the project is in terms of how many spaces and rooms we're talking about in a gym, or I don't know if you've gotten to that point. Do you have an idea for how big a footprint in terms of acreage, land that this will require? Do you have projections for how many parking spaces would it be needed for this? I understand the needs for these. I understand that we have a shortage of gym space. I agree that Coverly is not the right space because hopefully we have some gym space at Coverly coming back to us, but we need to add to that and we need to spread it out and diversify somewhere else. But also, I'm kind of confused about how to interpret the results of the survey, given that it's great that we got a lot of participation online, but there's a lot of ambiguity about it. We don't really know who's responding. People weren't required to respond. We know the pickleball community is very active and they have great outreach. The fact that there's so much support and call for indoor pickleball space, is that simply a matter of outreach of the pickleball groups saying go respond to the survey? I don't know. So I'm very curious about how we interpret these results. It's great that you got some people showing up to the in-person meeting, but and I know those are tricky, and we always usually want more that show up. Sometimes we're flooded and are surprised by that. So it's a fine line. So those are some initial questions. I don't know if I'd be looking for a response. If you have something now, I have more questions beyond that as well.
Chair, I'd like to just offer that, this was, I understand your concerns. I will say this isn't the end of community engagement. This was just starting the conversation, getting the word out, getting people to start thinking. I think some of those, well, and then I'll add too, we are also looking at, while it was in 2017, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan had a lot of community outreach. So it's important to consider that information that was received at that time. And then even when we were doing the Coverly Concept Plan a couple of years ago, we have all that data too that I think we can use that to help inform. But again, it's not the end of the community engagement. It's just we're just starting, we're just kicking off the conversation. So a lot more to come. And I think a lot of these comments will then help inform what the inside might look like. Is there a dedicated teen space? We don't know yet. Is there, a special senior, center? Not sure yet. So I think as we continue to do the community engagement, learn more, that will help inform the rest of those questions.
And I'll just chime in. And part of the community survey, community outreach, and also the survey, which I think was out there for about a week or
I
so,
think
something like that.
It was 3 weeks.
Yeah, so
Two.
that's kind of the initial stage, I think. You have to kind of know where people interests are before you can kind of, I guess, jump to the next level. But I think the fact that listening to the community reach out to us tonight and let us know what their concerns are, taking into consideration the concerns that came out of the survey, I think it's going to at least give us some, input to the next steps as we move forward. So like you said, it's a very early stage. And a lot of the suggestions as to what should go into the recreation center, I mean, there's input that we've received from the community, but I think there's a lot more information that we need to gather going forward. And I might even say that the talk might be that we'll have another community engagement meeting sometime in the future. I wouldn't think that just having just one is going to be all it's going to be.
Ann, did you want to comment?
I do, yes, if I could. So to be specific and answer the first question and think about what things go into a gym, I think that we really know most of the things that go in the gym. And I want to make sure that everybody on this table knows that I didn't suggest the swimming pool at the community meeting that ended up on the PowerPoint. So just to be really clear, we see a big space. Think about 3 basketball courts, but think about the ability to be flexible and have basketball going on, have volleyball going on, indoor soccer, badminton, table tennis, indoor pickleball, of course, Tai Chi, judo, martial arts, fitness programs, dance, Heart Fit for Life, which we have to include because it's so important to everybody in the community, weightlifting and exercise equipment, community meeting space, exercise classes for all boys and girls. So that's the specifics, Jeff, of what of what goes into a gym at this point. And I would be pretty surprised if there were 10 or 20 more activities that were named. I think that these are really pretty much the ones that we'll end up with. We did survey the city staff and said, hey, what can't you accommodate? What don't you have room for? And these were some of the things that came up. What do people want to rent Lucy Stern for, and that kind of thing. So I think we did a pretty good job of getting those details about what goes in a wellness center. So
Thanks.
does that help?
It helps. I'm not, so I certainly think the feedback we got and kind of the intuitive approach would be to make multiple flexible use spaces and have multiple rooms. I'm not sure why that wasn't presented to us more. I mean, all these ideas, what's stopping, is there a reason why we can't move forward with including the intent to have spaces that would be used for these particular activities? Because I'm not seeing this included anywhere specifically in the presentation or in the staff report that the public and the commission would be able to review. All the ideas that you just mentioned.
Okay, I'm confused. What is it that you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting let's add more details to.
Okay, so you know what I think is going
concept.
on here? We have been doing this for so long, and we haven't had a chance to come to the commission and say, hey, this is where we are with this. And these are the kinds of things that we learned that need to go into a wellness center or a gym because of the restrictions, we haven't been able to talk about it. So I can understand why you're asking, totally.
And okay. I think it's been a long time. I mean, we were hoping to get we were hoping to get you back to the commission in the fall and in November, December timeframe. And So there was an opportunity.
No, it's,
to present-
I mean,
present.
that's okay. No need to apologize. And then Darren, I'm assuming that because of what the city attorney suggested about location, that we're not able to even go through the answers to the second questions, at least that we looked at.
You know, I think
that what
only
you
on the
wanna put
very
it-
high, excuse me, only on the very high level. So we wouldn't want to get into pros and cons or that kind of thing at
Okay,
this
but
point.
would it be appropriate to be able to just name the kinds of, the places that the ad hoc had thought about?
Yes,
So we can do that?
yes. I asked the attorney and he said that on a high level it would be okay.
Chair, is that okay with you? I mean,
Yes, please.
because we really did a lot of kind of blue sky thinking. I mean, there was a thing about the soccer fields being lifted and the gym being put underneath and the soccer field on top of the Mayfield, you know, being up in the air and that kind of thing. And what if we did this and what if we did that? So I'm happy to just, for people's information, to go through the things that we looked at. And I know Jeff was part of that original, our Commissioner Lemaire was part of the original, so we could do that if that's appropriate. If it's not appropriate, we shouldn't do it today. So what do you think?
I think it is okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you've been working on this for a long time, and I have no
Yeah.
doubt we're just getting the very tip of the iceberg, and
Okay, so-
really looking to see more.
Not in any order of importance. And remember, Keith Reckdahl was on this group too. We talked about Mitchell Park by the skate bowl, or not the skateboard, by the bowl where we do the programs during the chili cook-off and that kind of thing. We talked about Greer Park because it was 22 acres and because there were some thought that it was underutilized that came from the golf course redesigned, and I'll come back to that in a minute. We talked about Cubberley because we knew it's a great piece of land. It's on public transportation. It has enough land. It's got playing fields. It's got, you know, a really good feel. And if there was space at Cubberley tomorrow, and we could build a gym or a wellness center there, I would be all for that. But I don't want to wait 10 years because it's going to take that long. We talked about the Ventura area and thought that that was really interesting because of the master planning that's going on over there and the fact that Ventura is so under parked. The facilities for park are just, they're not, and we've been working hard on that, but that they could use some additional recreation. We asked the city through Darren to talk about real estate that wasn't being used, that the city owned, that we didn't know about. There wasn't any, but we asked. And we also thought about all of the buildings that are not being used for offices anymore. As people redefine their workspace, would there not be a space that could be utilized as a gym or a wellness center? We talked about, I told you about the playing fields at Stanford. We talked about a potential Stanford trade. I mean, we didn't know anything about the possibility, but we talked about that. And then we thought if we had the community conversation, if there were other locations that we hadn't thought about, that might come to the forefront. I want to go back to the 10.5 acres because it's contiguous to the softball field and the baseball field over at the Baylands. And if all those pieces of land were put together, it could be an incredible sports complex for the future and for the city. And I know that there are some things that may not work about that. And it's a really big, gigantic vision, bigger than the gym wellness center that we envision. But I don't think we can have a community discussion without looking at that area and saying, what could we do if we put all that land together? So I think those are the places that we looked at. Commissioner Lemaire, do you remember any other?
I don't recall any other. I think it's a pretty exhaustive list and recap of the last few years of our process.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things we took into consideration as we were looking at these different locations was how convenient is it for, you know, a kid to bike to these locations and looking at traffic and those types of things. So you want to have something that's accessible. and that you can, for transportation that's centrally located. So those are some of so I mean, and again, all of these things, you looked at the pros and the cons of which one would lend itself to be, a better location than another, but also, you're still gathering information from the community about what would work and what would not work. And those are things we still have to listen to and make decisions based on that.
Thanks. Is there a specific site at Greer where you're considering, would be the best place for the wellness center, Jim?
There were two sites at Greer. One is at the north part of Greer where I think it's baseball field is now. I'm not sure whether it's baseball or soccer. It's a combo thing. So that's the Colorado Avenue West Bay Shore. And the other one is, I'm sorry, it's not Colorado, it's the Amarillo. And the other one is the Colorado, that fourth parcel of Greer Park that was just turned into a park in 2000, next to the skate park. So evidently there is enough room to do the skate park, to do the redesign and do a wellness center there. And it would be next to the new housing.
And that second location you're referring to is the area that member of the public, Sherry Furman, voiced concerns about, I believe.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Yes, Scott Meadow.
I'm sorry, what'd you call that area?
Yeah, referenced as Scott Meadow.
Scott Meadow, okay.
Yeah, or phase 4 of the development of Greer.
And so if the gym did end up going in that area, could there be some mitigation to recreate a memorial somewhere else?
Yeah, we'd have to put our heads
Yeah.
together and think about how to do that.
Within the realm of possibility. Thanks. So a few other things, I agree with some comments for the public that parking and transit are significant concerns at Greer. And they're going to be significant concerns no matter where we go. I would encourage some outreach to the Transportation Department and potentially the Planning and Transportation Commission before we get too far down the line and get some recommendations and some guidance from them. Looking back at our goals from our directive from City Council, as far as the demand assessment, I'm not sure that we've ticked that box. I think that we're hearing a lot of enthusiasm for a gym and wellness center from people who are interested in a gym and wellness center, but there have been concerns raised about the financial costs of that, and we need to figure out how to pose the question of trade-offs to really understand how the community would prioritize a project like this. Certainly, I think if we have the funding for the project coming forward from a private partnership, that increases the priority for a project as opposed to an unfunded project, but it's something we need to consider. So I think this is part of what we owe to City Council. We need to get back to City Council on further. I do have some concerns I'd like to voice in terms of the nonprofit that was created. I was very surprised to hear about this. I was surprised to read in the newspaper that we have 3 commissioners who are directors on this nonprofit. I was very surprised that this wasn't communicated to the commission at an earlier date either. I don't know if there's a specific reason why you didn't want to share this information with the commission before doing this, or at least bring this up in a monthly ad hoc report. I'm missing the connection here. And I think the perception of a conflict is real. I appreciate that the city attorney's office has, I appreciate that you did the right things and checked the right boxes before moving forward with this. That's following the letter of the law, but I still believe there's a perception issue out there that we need to be very aware of. And I think we need to be very forward and transparent and proactively about this. And I don't feel like that's happened to this point. And that concerns me. I don't know if there's a specific reason for that or not.
I would say I certainly appreciate your perspective, Chair. And I think that perhaps we made an assumption that we talked before at the commission meeting about a public-private partnership. We talked about the Junior Museum as a model that we were looking at. And then we spoke to the city staff about talking to the attorneys, and Darren brought it up, and we had a meeting last summer. And after that, I just didn't think about it anymore. And I know in a lot of conversations, you're always so good about making sure that we're adhering to the Brown Act and not bringing things up and not talking about things and not doing serial kind of thing. And so I don't know. So I appreciate your perspective. We thought we were all doing the right thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wasn't suggesting there was a malice of intent, but I think there is a perception issue we need to be careful
Actually, there
about.
was absolutely no
No,
malice
no,
involved. We were absolutely so excited about the project and the fact that we were able to find engage people in the community to participate in this project that could be an incredibly exciting project for everybody in the city.
Yeah,
especially the kids.
I share the excitement. I'm not trying to put a damper on it. I'm concerned about our use of ad hoc committees, and city council has had concerns about the use of ad hocs in the past. The handbook, states that subcommittees should be used judiciously, as it is the wish of the council that the entire BCC participate in most agenda topics. And I think we need to keep that in mind and err on the side of caution for things like this in the future. Other comments, Shani?
Yeah, so I have a question to the ad hoc and a comment. Are you still considering other sites, or are we narrowed down to only Gray Park?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Are you still looking at potentially other sites of the long list that you looked at?
You mean besides the ones that?
Besides Gray Park, are you still considering other places?
Are we considering other sites? Is that?
Yeah, are there other sites still being considered?
Yeah.
So I want to
And I
say
think that
something about like what I feel about the sites then, because I didn't think that was part of the discussion. I think that that one of the biggest values of large parks is being large parks. And when we start chopping them up and putting a dog park here and a pickleball here and something for little kids here and a gym here, we lose the benefit of a large park, which hosts events. The community loves, is always busy. And now we have all these things. Each one serves a part that is really important in the community, but we lose the large park aspect of it. And I'm especially concerned about Mitchell. I don't know Gray Park as well as I know Mitchell. I do not want to see Mitchell Park sliced up a lot more than it already is. There is huge value to all the events like the 4th of July cookout, the chili. People need that space. And when you start slicing it up, I think it's a problem. The other thing I want to say is that to go back to the site of the golf course, there was an EIR for the golf course that approved the EIR. And in that process, the potential for a gym there was found by council and in the ordinance. The gym was taken away from that because EIR found that there was no community support because of the distance and all the issues with traffic and getting kids there on a bike after school and all of that, but also because of significant unavoidable impacts that could not be mitigated. That's a big deal. Yeah. And so I don't know that.
Excuse me, Commissioner. I think I appreciate your comments, but I think we should probably steer away from the location question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Based on the previous
I just, because that's why I asked first. Okay.
Yeah.
My other comment is that there is a certain level of concern when 3 commissioners are on a board of one nonprofit. even if I support it. The city is going to appoint new commissioners soon, and it may be the same ones or not. But let's say there's a commissioner that is appointed that really doesn't want to see a gym. Is he going to be comfortable, or she, or they, comfortable speaking here? I'm not so sure, because there is already 3 out of 7 that are really obviously very much engaged. So I'm supportive of a gym, but I don't know that people would be comfortable to speak up. And that does create a certain problem, I think, that, the community, and Jeff brought up some other aspects. So thanks.
Could you clarify what the purpose of the nonprofit is? Is it fundraising primarily? Why I'm not entirely clear why if you're willing to share why the decision to form the nonprofit at this point was made.
I think simply to advocate and ultimately fundraise for a recreation wellness center for the community.
Thank you. So where do we go from here?
Well, the letter of intent has been suggested. I think that's a fine idea, but I think it's up to the whole of the commission to see, and the staff.
I think the letter of intent is the next step to council. I'm wondering if there's something we need to do more of before we get there. I'm not quite sure I have an answer for you tonight. Commissioner Kleinhaus's comments about location made me think, well, maybe do we need to come back and just have a session on potential location? Should we be doing something else? I'm just not sure yet. I'm very open to suggestions. I'm worried about, I think the letter of intent is important. I'm also worried about going too soon.
Sure. So obviously we need to come back to the commission at a later date for an action for a letter of intent that's not agendized today. I think maybe this would be a good opportunity to see if our liaison, Vice Mayor Stone, would like to comment.
Thanks, Chair Greenfield. Been a really fascinating discussion. Interested to hear the community feedback and just the questions asked by the commissioners and the back and forth there. So this has been helpful. Do agree with, I think it'd be a good idea to have a deeper dive into the discussion and flush that out a little more. There's a lot of positives with Greer Park, but I can see a lot of concerns, and those have already been addressed by the community. And I think having maybe a session really dedicated to that would be helpful. I would envision that's going to be probably one of the biggest issues if this were to come before council, is a discussion on that location. And I'd imagine there'd be a lot of interest in any proposed alternatives and why or why not those wouldn't work. Really appreciate all the work that the ad hoc has done. I know this has been a massive lift, so great to see how far this has come. I won't weigh in on kind of the discussion of the nonprofit, but I do think just process wise, I think it seems just beneficial to have more communication whenever possible, and so kind of agree with some concerns about commissioners not hearing about the nonprofit until they read about it in the paper. I think better communication during commission meetings, maybe during commissioner announcements, could be helpful, and maybe some more routine check-ins with this ad hoc kind of publicly within these commission meetings. Kind of surprised me the 15 months since this was last brought back before the commission. And I think this is one of the issues that this commission is going to deal with, that is probably going to get some of the most public interest over the next 12 to 18 months, and council interest. And it's going to be a massive project with a big price tag. And so I think the more we can do on this, the better. But again, appreciate all the work. I'm excited for this. I think it's headed in the right direction and looking forward to seeing it come towards us. So thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments that you've shared with us and help us find some direction here. One suggestion I would make at this point is for the ad hoc to go back and look at the specific requests from City Council last year, the directive for staff and the commission to provide feedback and make sure that we've checked all those boxes as a first next step. I agree. I think we're going to need at least 2 meetings before we would have the letter of intent ready to go. We need at least one preliminary meeting and then a meeting where we have an action for the letter. So we have some time to keep moving on forward on this. I would hope that we could meet more often and speed up our timelines.
That's fair enough. But to suggest, I would love to have us have, as you guys say, a deep dive into locations and pros and cons as soon as the attorney, passes whatever they need to decide. Because I think that there are a lot of smart people in this community, and there are a lot of people who know where there's spaces, and there may be spaces out there to have a wellness center that we don't even know about. And I think that would be really, really critical. So that and the letter of intent is going to be critical because there aren't any funders in our community or anyplace else who are going to do much without support from the city council. So location and potential funding is really important. And I appreciate not 15 months from now. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you for bringing this to us, and we'll look forward to hearing more on this soon. Next up on our agenda is a work plan review and planning discussion. Let me find my notes on that. Okay. This is the last meeting for this, the term of this commission. It's actually been a longer term than usual with the extension of a end date of the appointments from December 15th to March 31st. I wanted to review some of the end of term work that we have in front of us, and particularly regarding the work plan, our 2022-23 work plan, wrapping that up. And I thought it'd be helpful to go over some of the process details, particularly considering there's newer commission members, and also the fact that we've only been through the work plan for 2 years now. So after considerable discussions with the city clerk, we do have clarification that our 2023-24 work plan needs to be submitted by the end of May, as opposed to earlier, which didn't make sense given the turnover of the new appointments on the commission. So this is achievable, but we'll be on a tight schedule to accomplish this. A year ago at our March 22 meeting, the entire body of the meeting was dedicated to completing our 22-23 work plan. So we should be thinking about something like that happening coming up. So our April meeting will be our commission reorganization meeting where a new chair and vice chair will be elected. Then we typically follow that by having our annual retreat. In order to meet the deadline of getting our work plan completed and submitted by the end of May, we'll have to have our retreat in early May, where we'll establish our annual priorities in alignment with City Council's priorities. We'll establish our ad hocs and liaison assignments. And typically what we did in the past based on our ad hocs, a work plan item comes out of each of the ad hocs. So that'll be in early May, and that's why the notifications have gone out already, trying to come up with a projected date for our annual retreat, even though we don't know exactly who's going to be on the commission based on when the appointments are made by City Council, which I understand is probably going to happen later in April, hopefully before our April commission meeting. Now, everyone should understand that even if your term is expiring on March 31st, you're permitted and encouraged to continue to participate and to serve on the commission until a new appointment is made. And so as part of that, I want to encourage everyone on the commission to work with their ad hoc to look to wrap up, to put together a summary and create a work plan item results summary that we can integrate into our 2023-24 work plan. So our May meeting I expect will focus primarily or exclusively on our work plan and getting that completed. Looking to follow my notes here. What we did last year for our work plan, Darren, can you pop up our current work plan? So according to the BCC manual, work plans should include an annual report on the results of the prior year plan. The way we interpret that after a fair amount of discussion amongst the commission is at the beginning. This is can you scroll down a little, please? Oh, yeah. So we can see the column down below. So either you see prior year accomplishments are listed in the left side of that column. So at the beginning of our work plan, there's each of the work plan items from the previous year is listed in the first bullet, and effectively the results of the work plan are included there. And what you should be doing is looking at the work plan items. Darren, can you please scroll down to the first work plan item? So for each item, we're specifying what the impacts and timeline will be. We're listing measure of success, and that's really what we should be commenting against for our work plan summary results. And it's okay to include gaps where we didn't, if we're not meeting the success we're aiming for, it's okay to mention that. I think the accomplishments should be more open-ended, a summary of what was good and maybe where we fell short, so we can learn from our lessons. Something we focused on as a commission when creating this results is that this work plan summary becomes a public document, and it's an annual record of what we've accomplished as a commission, and it's pretty concise, and so I think it certainly takes some work from us to put it together. City Council's asked us to do this, but I think it's for a good reason, and it serves a good purpose. So what I'd like to encourage is for each of the ad hocs to look to convene as soon as possible. Take a look at your work plan item from the previous year and work to put together your results summary that would go in the top section of this. And if we can get this done before we jump into our retreat and setting our priorities and all the other things that take a lot more time, it'll help us get a little bit that much further ahead of the game and help us get our work plan completed by the end of May. Any questions or comments on this? Is this helpful?
Yeah, just one comment would be to, at the retreat and then afterward to, really try to, as an ad hoc, dive deep into these project goals in that the meeting can become very inefficient when we bring these goals to the commission we end up workshopping them a lot in the commission. I think we can be much more efficient in our time now that we've had a chance to do this the last year, and perhaps talking about that at the retreat and thinking about how we can really be efficient with that May meeting with these.
Absolutely. I mean, going through the process of looking at what you've set 1 year as your measurement of success, and then rating yourself or compiling results certainly is going to help us develop the measure of success for the next work plans moving forward. And so I absolutely agree with that, and I think it's important to do this before we create our next work plan, so that it'll help streamline and optimize the process of creating a more effective work plan. One other thing I wanted to note is also included in the BCC manual is that a desire to include metrics of community involvement and participation in meetings and activities. And so this is going to be not the easiest part of our work plan annual report, but to the extent possible, we'll need to draw on some assistance from staff on this as well. But for each ad hoc, we should try to note the number of meetings we've had, to the extent possible, note the number of participants, go through and look at the minutes and see how many speakers there have been for these items when they've come to the commission. I think these would be helpful metrics to include. I'm interested in staff's thoughts on that, if they think that this is something that we should go to the effort to doing. It won't be easy for any of us, but
Yeah, maybe staff could take a first look at that and perhaps try one and see how long it takes, if we can come up with some really relevant and meaningful, significant data, and then replicate that across the board for the different ad hocs.
yeah, meaningful and significant are really key words to use here. Let's try to avoid spinning our wheels for the sake of spitting something out, but let's try and see if we can find something that's useful here. We do often talk about being a data-driven group and looking for data and information. So I can appreciate the desire for this. Any other comments? Or we can bring this item to a close. Darren, do you have any more comments from a staff perspective?
No, I think you covered it well, Chair. Thanks.
I guess I have one question. Would this be the time where we would discuss the moving existing ad hocs to liaison role, or dissolving, or even the creation of new ones if there was a need for that? I believe that was the case last year, so that can be proposed to council, just to clarify for the group.
So we should make those decisions at a retreat. But certainly beforehand, the ad hoc can make a recommendation if they see. Actually, that brings up a really good point. The ad hocs can be proactively looking to identify what appropriate tasks would be for a follow-up ad hoc, if that applies. In some cases it'll apply, in some cases it won't. We know that we're going to want to continue doing something for a wellness center and recreation gym. We know that for the website update, that would probably be something appropriate to fold into a liaison role. So I think it would be appropriate for each of the ad hocs to have a recommendation in mind of what would be appropriate for the next year. And then as a body, as a commission, we did make a decision on that.
Okay.
Does that follow? Good question. Good addition. Anything else? Okay. Let's now move on to ad hoc committee and liaison updates. Who would like to start? Who would like to share?
I can start.
Thank you.
So I have had a meeting, well, Phil, as a Phil last on, I actually haven't had a chance to connect with individuals, I guess, from the baseball and softball community. I did get, I do know that there's some initiatives that were being planned, but the rain has sort of delayed some of those projects, such as doing some of the infill work and so forth. So a lot of these things like in communications with Mark from your team, who
Ribeiro, yeah.
indicated that you know, the rain has sort of put the back on some projects. They pretty much have to wait until the field's dry in order for, you know, to do some of the mowing. And you know, so we all know that we never know when the rain's going to stop. So you kind of have to wait for some solid sunshine for things to normalize. So, but it seems like the baseball folks are, he's doing a good job of communicating with them and keeping them in the loop of what's going on. So that's a good thing. As far as golf, I met with Blom last week, and you know, some of the participation in the golf has been affected by the bad weather reports, and he's been, you know, stunned by other, you know, projects in the city with some of the emergency issues that's going down. And I think, as Darren just said, he's still waiting to hear back from the water board. So he followed up with that. I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So he doesn't want to be, you know, right now they've got just as many things going on as the city does. So, you know, he's on top of it. And when we meet, we talk about what's going on with that. So I think we're in good shape there. And that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you. Others?
Just very briefly, in terms of my liaison role with Safe Routes, there is a Palo Alto High School student who is looking to do something with a traffic garden in a park, and she's recently reached out to me directly, so I will be corresponding with her to see what she might have in mind. But again, it's just great that one of our local students and young people is looking to do something. So we'll see how we can best help with the project.
Can you say a little bit more about the potential project?
So it's a traffic garden, which is something that helps younger kids learn how to ride bikes and learn how to make some decisions on the roads. And some of it was brought up in that during the pandemic, there were a whole cohort of students who missed out on their bike rodeo in their elementary school. And so this student thought one project could be to do something like that in a park that would allow young people to be able to learn bike safety and you know, of course, with the number of youth bicycle riders we have in our city, I think could potentially be a great project.
That's great. And is the transportation department involved with that at all?
Yeah, Safe Routes is who put me in touch with the student.
Great.
So the Rec Opportunities Ad Hoc, we did have an update from Sam, who, the skate park young man who has been working with his designer. And I believe they're getting close to having some designs to show to the staff. I don't know whether Darren has any more information, but that's as much as we know. And he seems to be pretty happy about the way things are going. And he did have a big success reaching out to almost 200 skateboard people to get their opinions about different things. So it's good. So it's moving along, I guess we should say.
Others?
Just so we've, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for the marketing sort of committee, we
have not done very much in the last month. We tried to have a couple meetings, but we couldn't really get together. And two of the things that are on our agenda are the ability to use the Enjoy catalog space for something to announce about park and recreation, or either the commission or something that's going on or something like that. So we have to redouble our efforts to put together a schedule now that we know that the Enjoy is available to us, which is great. And we have a opportunity to use a designer. And so we'll work on that. But we missed the mark there for one of the quarters, so we didn't have anything this time.
Great.
Just that we continue to work with staff and the dog owners association group to look for a dog park opportunity in North Palo Alto. But we are still looking at possible locations.
Thank you. I have a few items regarding electric conveyances or e-bikes. I had a conversation. There was a member of the public who asked to speak with me about the e-bike policy. He was a speaker at City Council. I had a nice conversation with him. I've also reached out. I followed up on the letter from the Pali newspaper student asking for someone to reach out to them. So I'm waiting to find a time to meet with them. I appreciated Penny Elson's letter regarding bike rack options for the city. I've always been an advocate of supporting alternate transportation, particularly including additional bicycle parking infrastructure. And on that note, I did notice just this weekend, there's new bike parking. I'm not quite sure how new, but at the North Mountain View entrance to the Baylands, right at the end of San Antonio Road at Terminal Boulevard, there's now some bike loops by the bathroom there, which is nice. It used to be kind of a fence to be able to lock bikes at, but that's a great addition from our neighbor that's helpful for us, and look forward to being able to build on that. The Mid-Penn Hawthorns area plan is progressing towards the formation of a public access working group. This is something that's kind of been in the works for a while now, and this working group would be a public forum for stakeholders to collaborate with Mid-Penn on things like parking and trail opportunities. And so I've been the liaison for this group, but it's been a passive role waiting for something to happen, and it's threatening to happen fairly soon. Working to set up a meeting with the urban forestry ad hoc in advance of a likely tree ordinance review at the Parks and Rec meeting next month. Continuing to follow up with park dedication on the potential formal dedication of the Greer Park sewer easement area that we discussed last month, and working with staff to keep tabs on when the timing for this will be. Maybe next month, maybe the month after that, but it seems like within the next 1 to 3 months is likely. And finally, getting back to I guess that's all I have for updates before we move on to the final agenda item. Does anyone else have any further updates? Okay, now moving on to the final item, which is Commissioner Board Member questions, comments, announcements, and future agenda items. Anyone have any questions, comments, difficulties? I will comment. I will note that based on the doodle poll that was sent out regarding scheduling a retreat, which we've typically had on Fridays, the best time that everyone seems to be acceptable to everyone is Friday, May 12th from 12 to 4 p.m. So that's our target right now. This won't be finalized until a new chair is named and the members of the body are appointed. But that's our tentative working date. If, I know that some of you are not available all day that day. I think it would be helpful if you could just email staff with what time you're available around the 12 and 4 window. So if it's from 10 to 5, or if it's just from 12 to 4, if you could just clarify to staff what your full-time availability window is on that day, that would be helpful. And obviously, that's just an estimate at this point in time before we finalize it. Darren, should we talk about agenda for the coming months?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Some things that I still need to confirm, but I know we were looking at the tree protection ordinance as a possibility, and we'll fine tune that once we meet with Peter Gollinger and learn more about his timeframes. Same situation with that easement at Greer Park. So I've got communications into 3 different departments to see, would this be ready? So I'm kind of waiting for responses on that. Those are the 2 big ones that we were looking at.
And we will, of course, have our reorganization at the beginning
Yes.
of our April meeting. And then for May, work plan is front and center, middle, and I don't know if that we'll have time for anything else. We'll have a better idea of that after our retreat and see where we are on that. And also part of that depends on the progress we make on our wrap up of our 2022-23 work plans that we talked about earlier. If there's something on a North Palo Alto Dog Park coming up in the May timeframe, that might be something that we could squeeze in. Also, we talked, no optimism there. Okay. Any chance that Foothills Nature Preserve presentation would be available to move into April?
No, I don't think that April is possible. Maybe May, and I'll talk to Public Works about that.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be good to get that lined up soon. Any other suggestions or requests for agenda items from commission members?
Forget about the Recreation Wellness Center. Maybe we should have a permanent place on the agenda for the next 6 months.
Maybe.
Up to you.
We're certainly interested in getting updates during the ad hoc update, and certainly as soon as you're ready to come back to us with a further discussion, hopefully within the next 3 months or so. It seems like June might be good to target for that. I don't think that, I'm guessing you're not going to be ready to come back next month. May is pretty full with a work plan, so June could be a good target. Anything else?
Maybe we could discuss all the projects that are planned in the Baylands, whether they're parks or not, and kind of get an idea of all the projects and timelines. You know, we touch this elephant in different points, and it would be nice to have sort of an overall view of what's going on.
Sorry, an overall view of the park.
Of all the different projects and the timeline and who's responsible for them, whether it's Public Works or Parks or other agencies.
At the Baylands, or?
Yeah, there is the safer levy, there is the horizontal levy, there is the, I don't know all the projects, I just know some of them. And then there's also like routine operations and of the landfill and everything. And I think kind of getting a view of all the stuff that's going on in the Baylands and all the different city departments involved would be of interest to me anyway. I don't know about everybody else.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, and I know in discussions we had with Sam Anglage about the horizontal levy project, where we did raise the issue of making sure there was a coordination with the Baylands Tide Gate replacement project, which is evolving, and also with the sewer line replacement project. So that, I don't know if that, Darren, does that seem like something that would be confined enough to include in the staff report?
I can certainly try. Maybe that's a good starting place. I can come up with a list of them, the timeframes, who's running it. Yeah, I'll give that a shot and then we can do more.
And if you can include things that are routine, like the landfill operations, you know, the things that are going on all the time, but they really have restrictions on what other things can happen. Like you can't really put a tree on the landfill. I would love to have more of them, right? So I think things like that would, a little bit of what's going on there on routine and then projects that are happening.
Yep. And related to that kind of line of thinking, as you're tying off your work plans, also start thinking about what your priorities are for the next session. What items you'd like to include in a work plan, and put more thought into what new work might be worth considering. It's easier to consider how to follow up with the next step of some existing projects, but what else are we missing, or what else is of interest to you? What else do we want to do? On that note, before I close the meeting, I'm going to reach out one more time to our council liaison. Greer, anything you'd like to add or share?
No, just I know you're all aware, Monday night, the Measure East site was back before City Council. And yeah, appreciate all the work that you all do. Thank you.
See you then. Thank you. With that, I'll call this meeting to a close. Thanks, everyone.